I never thought something like this could happen to me. It started off like any other day. I was sitting at home trying to forget the pain of a recent breakup. Scott and I had been together for years, and when it ended, I felt completely lost. I tried to keep myself busy, but no matter what I did, my mind kept wandering back to him. Then one evening, when I was scrolling through Reddit trying to distract myself, I saw a post about the dark web. People talked about strange things. Things like weird websites, illegal activities, and secret content that shouldn't exist. At first, I thought it was just a joke or something to laugh at, but curiosity gnawed at me. It sounded like something out of a movie, and I was looking for anything to stop thinking about my ex. I found a link that promised to reveal things most people never see. They said it was a place where anything could be found, even things that weren't legal. My heart raced with excitement. I knew it was dangerous, but a part of me didn't care. What could possibly go wrong? After some hesitation, I decided to give it a try. I downloaded the special browser that people use to access the dark web. It wasn't hard to do, and soon enough I was looking at the hidden parts of the internet. I was amazed by what I saw. There were strange forums, discussions about illegal things, and websites I couldn't even begin to understand. I quickly realized that this place was much darker than I ever imagined. Then I came across a link that caught my attention. It looked like a normal site, but the more I looked at it, the more I noticed something strange about it. It was a photo sharing site filled with pictures of people. As I clicked through, I was hit with a cold wave of realization. Those weren't just random pictures. They were personal, and some of them looked a lot like mine. That's when panic set in. How did these people get my photos? How could anyone have access to such personal things about my life? I tried to close the site, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen on that site. It felt like I had just opened a door into a world I wasn't meant to see. My mind raced with questions. Who had these pictures of me? Why were they there? I couldn't let it go. I had to know more. My curiosity grew, even though I knew deep down it was dangerous. I spent the next few days digging deeper. Every time I logged onto the dark web, I felt like I was in a different world. One where rules didn't matter. But as much as I tried to convince myself it was all just a joke, I couldn't ignore the dark reality of what I was uncovering. Some sites showed disturbing content, videos, messages, things that should never be shared with anyone. One night, while exploring a new part of the web, I found a site that looked completely different from the others. It was just a black screen with nothing but a simple message. Welcome to the true dark web. My heart raced as I clicked the link. Suddenly, a chat box popped up on my screen. The message was short. Are you ready to see the truth? I felt a chill run down my spine. This wasn't just some random site. Someone was behind this. Someone was watching me. Without thinking, I typed a quick response. What do you mean? The chat box disappeared, and the screen. Now I was looking at a video. It was grainy black and white footage showing a small room. The lighting was dim, and a man was tied to a chair, his body slumped. Behind him stood a woman, her face hidden behind a mask. She was holding something in her hands, and the atmosphere was tense, unsettling. I watched as the woman slowly approached the man. She reached out and with a smooth motion cut off his blindfold. His eyes blinked open, and I saw the terror in them. He was drugged, unable to move or fight back. It felt real. Too real. My pulse quickened as I leaned in closer to the screen. For a moment I thought I should turn it off, but I couldn't. I had to know what happened next. I couldn't stop myself. The woman stood over the man, knife in hand, her masked face emotionless. My heart was racing. I could feel the tension in the air, and my mind screamed at me to turn it off, to get out of there. But my fingers stayed frozen above the mouse. I couldn't look away. What kind of twisted place had I stumbled into? The woman spoke for the first time. Her voice was cold, almost robotic, as she instructed the man to remain still. She didn't care that he was drugged, that he was helpless. She was there to perform a job. And for some reason, the chat room was alive with messages of excitement and anticipation from other users, urging her on. My stomach turned at the sight of it all. How could anyone get pleasure from watching something so horrific? Then, without warning, she moved in. The knife flashed in the dim light, and with one quick motion, she sliced off one of his fingers. The blood sprayed onto the floor, and the man let out a muffled groan, unable to stop her. The chat exploded in a frenzy, filled with users praising her, asking for more. I felt sick, my breath catching in my throat, but a part of me was drawn deeper into it. I didn't want to watch, but I couldn't pull myself away. The woman continued, cutting off his fingers one by one, then his hands, his wrists. It felt like hours had passed, though I couldn't tell how long I had been watching. The worst part? I wasn't just disgusted. I was fascinated. I felt something shift inside me, a dark thrill I'd never felt before, the excitement, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. It was intoxicating, the fear, the horror. It was all wrapped in a twisted kind of fascination. I was hooked, and then it happened. With a final, deliberate slice, the woman ended his life. Blood poured from his throat, and the screen went black. The chat room erupted into applause, with users cheering, congratulating her for the show. I felt sick, like I had just witnessed something I could never unsee. But at the same time, a part of me wanted more. I quickly jotted down the date for the next event. I knew I had crossed a line that I couldn't go back from. This was no longer just some curiosity. It had become an obsession. I had found something that filled the void I'd been searching for, and I couldn't stop now. I was already planning my next dive into the abyss, unsure of where it would take me, but deep down, I knew there was no turning back. The dark web had become a part of me. I always thought Michelle and I had something special. She was everything I wasn't, tall, confident, and full of life. She had these dazzling green eyes that seemed to make everyone stop and look whenever we went out. I never had much confidence in myself. I wasn't as tall, I didn't have a chiseled jaw or abs like some of the guys who would always glance her way. But Michelle was different. She always reassured me that I was the best thing for her, that she loved me. But over time, something started to feel off. At first, I chalked it up to my own insecurities, but the signs kept adding up. She started spending more time on her phone, laughing and smiling at things I couldn't see. When I asked her what was so funny, she'd just brushed me off, saying she was chatting with her friends. It was always the same response, and it didn't feel right. I tried to ignore it, but the feeling gnawed at me every day. Was she really happy with me? Or was there someone else? My thoughts spiraled, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was happening behind my back. I felt like I was losing her, but I had no proof. It was just a gut feeling. One night after another, one of those nothing's wrong responses, I snapped. I had to know for sure. My mind raced with ideas, trying to figure out how I could get some answers without confronting her directly. I couldn't stand the idea of her lying to me. Then, in a moment of madness, I thought of something. The dark web. It seemed crazy, but there were people there who could do things normal people couldn't. Things I never thought I'd consider. If I could just track her, see what she was really doing, I'd know the truth. I convinced myself it was the only way. I opened my laptop, feeling a mix of fear and anticipation. It only took a few minutes to find the right browser. My hands shook slightly as I typed in the search, looking for a way to spy on her without her ever knowing. I couldn't believe I was doing this, but at the same time, I couldn't stop myself. As soon as I started browsing the dark web, I felt like I was stepping into a different world, a world where rules didn't apply and everything was for sale. I wasn't sure what to expect, but the more I clicked around, the darker the content became. There were ads for all kinds of devices, software, and even services that promised to help track people, hack accounts, and get information that shouldn't be available. It felt wrong, but at the same time, a part of me didn't care. I needed to know what Michelle was up to. I found a website that seemed to offer exactly what I was looking for. A tiny, discreet camera that could be attached to someone's clothing. It wasn't expensive, and it seemed like the perfect solution to all my problems. I convinced myself it was harmless, that I was just looking out for myself, that I wasn't doing anything wrong. But deep down, I knew I was crossing a line. I ordered the camera, trying not to think too much about it. It felt like a necessary evil, just a way to ease my mind and confirm my suspicions. I couldn't bear the thought of being cheated on, of being lied to. The idea of knowing everything, of catching her in the act, gave me a strange sense of relief. Once I had the proof, I could confront her, and everything would be clearer. Days passed, and the camera finally arrived. I felt a mix of excitement and dread as I unpacked it. It was small, discreet, and easy to hide. I thought about the best way to use it without Michelle noticing. As I sat in my room, waiting for the right moment, a feeling of unease settled over me. What was I really doing? Was I willing to destroy my relationship just to find out the truth? But the doubt quickly faded. I knew I had to act before it was too late. That night, as Michelle was getting ready for bed, I slipped the camera into her purse when she wasn't looking. My heart was pounding. I tried to act normal, to pretend everything was fine, but inside, I was a mess. What was I going to find out? I didn't expect anything to happen right away, but over the next few days, I noticed that Michelle was acting differently. She was still on her phone a lot, but now there was a sense of secrecy about it. I couldn't help myself. I checked the footage. What I saw wasn't what I expected. What I saw on the footage shattered me. Michelle wasn't cheating, not in the way I feared, but what I saw was something equally troubling. There she was, texting late at night, but the conversations weren't with some guy. They were with someone else. Someone I didn't know. She was planning something that didn't include me. She'd been acting distant, and now I had proof. She wasn't physically cheating, but emotionally she was somewhere else entirely. My heart dropped as I saw how she was talking to this person. They shared inside jokes, plans for weekends I wasn't a part of, conversations that seemed to carry more weight than the one we had. It hurt more than I could put into words. I wasn't just worried about a physical betrayal. I was losing her emotionally too. And what made it worse was that she didn't seem to even care how it was affecting me. The guilt washed over me, but I couldn't stop looking. I had opened this door, and now I couldn't close it. Every message she sent seemed like another punch to my gut. I wasn't enough for her anymore. My mind raced with thoughts. Should I confront her? Should I tell her what I'd done? I felt like a monster for spying on her, but the truth was even worse. I was being pushed out of her life, and I couldn't just sit back and let it happen. I tried to talk to her, but it was like speaking to a stranger. She didn't seem to care about what I had seen, about what I was feeling. She brushed it off, said I was overreacting, and just like that, the wall between us grew higher. I felt trapped, helpless. My worst fear had come true. I wasn't just losing her, I was losing myself in this mess. The dark web, the spying, the constant checking. I had gone too far. In my quest for answers, I had uncovered a truth I wasn't ready to face. I had destroyed whatever trust was left between us. Now she was slipping away, and I couldn't stop it. The worst part? I didn't even know who to blame anymore. Was it her for changing? Was it me for not seeing it sooner? Or was it the dark web, this twisted place that made me question everything? All I knew was that I had crossed a line I could never uncross. Let me take you back to a time when curiosity was my guide and the mundane routine of life felt suffocating. I was a senior in high school, and let's be honest, I wasn't exactly the popular kid. My friends and I were the misfits, the ones who spent our time talking about things most people didn't even care to understand. We were the outsiders, discussing conspiracies, dark corners of the internet, and things that seemed to be far beyond what normal teenagers would know. It was one of my friends who first mentioned the deep web. the part of the internet that operates in the shadows, where anonymity reigns and anything could be bought or sold. You can do whatever you want without anyone knowing, they told me. The idea itself sounded too strange to ignore. I wasn't like my friends, though. They mostly used the deep web for buying illegal stuff, drugs, stolen goods, pirated software, and all sorts of illicit items. But I wasn't after that. No, I wanted to explore the unknown, to witness the things that no one dared to see. I dove into research, and the stories I uncovered were unlike anything I'd ever imagined. Fetishes, organ trafficking, even assassination contracts. I was both horrified and intrigued. The idea of peering into an underworld, a hidden reality, thrilled me. It felt like opening a door to an entirely new existence, one that would break the monotony of my daily routine. Waking up at the same time, sitting through boring classes, doing the same homework every night, it was all getting too predictable. Was anyone else stuck in that loop? I needed a change, and the deep web seemed like the perfect escape. After several warnings from friends about the dangers, hackers, viruses, and worse, I finally decided to take the plunge. I had learned enough to navigate it, or so I thought. I could feel the excitement build in my chest. What would I find? What could possibly be lurking in the corners of the internet that people whispered about? Logging in was surprisingly easy. The screen flickered, and I was there. At first, I found the usual content. Forums about conspiracy theories, illegal drugs, and uninteresting government gossip. But there was a sense of disappointment, too. I didn't come here for this. These were the same things everyone talked about. Then, just as I was about to give up, I found it a strange, nameless site. At first, I thought it was a broken link. It was just a black screen. But then, a message popped up in the chat box from someone calling themselves the administrator. "Congratulations," the message read. "You found the worst place on the net." I stared at the screen. It was absurd. What kind of place was this? Who was behind the message? I didn't feel fear, not yet. Only a growing sense of curiosity. I typed a reply. "What's so great about it?" No response. Minutes passed, and then the chat box disappeared. A new screen appeared. A video began to play, grainy and black and white, showing a small room with only a single wooden chair in the center. Suddenly, the door creaked open. A man, blindfolded, was shoved into the room, his body limp as though drugged. Behind him was a woman dressed in black, her face hidden by a mask. The atmosphere was thick with tension. My heart raced. The anticipation gripped me like nothing I'd ever felt before. What was this? What was going to happen next? The woman pulled out a knife and cut the man's blindfold. He didn't resist. The instant his eyes were exposed, I saw it. He wasn't in control. He was drugged, completely helpless. My stomach turned, but I couldn't look away. It was wrong, it was twisted. I knew I should leave, that I should call someone, but I was frozen. The camera zoomed in, and the woman's knife slowly moved towards the man's throat. The chat exploded with messages, one user typing, "Cut off his finger." I recoiled. I didn't want to watch this, but part of me, the darker side I couldn't ignore, was drawn to the screen. What would happen next? Was this real? Was this what I'd been searching for? The woman smiled and with precision severed his finger. Blood sprayed and the chat room erupted in celebration. The man, unable to defend himself, could only groan in pain. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing, but I couldn't tear myself away. Each cut, each severed limb, the blood spilling onto the floor. It was all happening right before me, and the sickening truth was that I was fascinated. My mind told me this was wrong, but the thrill of it was intoxicating. I wanted more. I needed to see what would happen next. The woman continued, cutting off each of his fingers slowly, one by one. It felt like an eternity. My fingers hovered over the escape button, but I couldn't bring myself to click it. Every time I thought I should stop, something deeper inside urged me to stay. Finally, after what felt like hours, the man's arms were nothing but bloody stumps. His legs were gone, and then, just like that, the woman slit his throat. His lifeless body dropped to the floor and the chat room exploded into cheers. I couldn't believe it. I had just witnessed a murder, a brutal execution, and yet I felt alive. This was the excitement I had been looking for, the darkness I had craved. I quickly jotted down the date for the next event. I knew I would return. There was no turning back now. This was who I was. I had crossed a line, and now I was part of something much bigger, something dangerous, something that would change me forever.